Forgiveness sucks, especially in the context of forgiving someone who has genuinely hurt you, be it emotionally or physically, and it's something that we and characters in media commonly struggle with. However, both from the secular and the religious point of view, most people can generally agree that forgiveness is a really important part of our physical and mental well-being. There is, however, a difference between the secular and the religious interpretation of what exactly forgiveness is, and this secular interpretation and understanding of forgiveness is something that the prodigal God challenges. So we know that the importance of forgiveness has been highlighted in both Christianity and in the secular world. In the Bible, Jesus states, "Let us forgive our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." According to Kim, in his research group, coming from the secular psychology point of view, forgiveness can decrease anger, anxiety, and depression, and increase self-esteem and hopefulness for the future. But as we go through and figure out how important forgiveness is, it's really important to talk about, again, what is forgiveness and how are we applying it? What does it really mean? One example of the secular perspective on forgiveness can be seen in the show Gilmore Girls. In the show, Lorelai Gilmore, who is the main character, leaves her parents at the age of 16 after getting pregnant, and she moves out and basically cuts off all contact. Years later, when her daughter is going into prep school before college, she needs money in order to pay the tuition. So she decides to go back to her mother and basically beg for money. And this brings them back into relationship with each other. It does not, however, result in much forgiveness. So in this instance, both the parent and the child were in the wrong. And while the parents do accept her, they do so very coldly. And they pay for her tuition with these conditions, like they have to come to Friday night dinner, and there's a lot of emotional restrictions that are also put and must be paid for in order for her to get this help and assistance. In this, we can see that in the secular world, action and accountability must transpire before forgiveness, because in spite of the fact that they are helping her out, they really haven't forgiven each other because they need the action and the accountability first. Forgiveness cannot simply be given, it must be earned. Lorelai's story in Gilmore Girls contrasts very nicely with the Christian story in the story of the prodigal son, in which a father wrongs his son, leaves home, squanders all of his money, and then comes back begging for money. In this time, however, whenever he comes back begging for money, instead of being received coldly and with conditions and these restrictions and things, he is instead met with forgiveness right off the bat. The way that the author of The Prodigal God puts it, the father is saying, "You are not going to earn your way back into the family. I am simply going to take you back." This radical forgiveness really flies in the face of most modern thought, which would suggest that you actually have to earn your forgiveness. We know, both from the Christian and from the secular perspective, that forgiveness is really important. However, the way that we understand forgiveness can very easily be shaped by the world that we live in, which, for the most part, can be very secular. It is important to remember that as a Christian, forgiveness can look very different from that which is demonstrated for us in media. And while boundaries are still important, it is also important to remember the fact that Christ calls us to a radical form of Christianity, which does call us to a radical form of forgiveness. Not the kind that is conditional, not the kind that it requires action years, but the kind that is just radical and freely given. Yeah. And I think that's pretty cool.